for joining the live stream or for watching the recording. Today, I'll be talking about the free access to the Czech labor market because I've been receiving a lot of messages lately and there's been a lot of confusion. Some of the clients we are working now with, they came to us saying, okay, this is my situation. I did this because I have free access to the labor market. And then we explained that it's actually not exactly like this and that they've already done something incorrectly. So I want to clear this up. I'll try to explain everything as clearly as possible. I'll try to give you some examples. So hopefully after watching the live stream or the video, you'll be clear about that. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I will not be answering questions which are not related to the topic, the free access to the Czech labor market. This is not like an open live stream, which I do. Sometimes this is like a topic specific. So enough of the introduction and let's go. So there are generally two types of free accesses to the Czech labor market. I would call them, one is earned and the other is like by nationality. So not earned. And I will explain the difference, or I will explain the difference, but we will talk more about the one by nationality because that's the new thing and that's the confusing thing. The earned ones basically mean that you need to fulfill some conditions to get the free access to the Czech labor market. So generally speaking, or the most common examples would be students of accredited programs in the Czech Republic. They have free access to the Czech labor market. People who finished Czech accredited programs, have Czech diploma, have free access to the Czech labor market. People with the permanent residence permit have free access to the Czech labor market, but that's like you had to do something to earn that. What I will focus on today is those 10 nationalities that have free access to the Czech labor market just based on their nationality. That's a new thing that was introduced just last year. Now recently there have been one more edit and the rules are kind of confusing. So I'll try to clear this up for you. So now first, what nationalities have free access to the Czech labor market? Number one, USA, 2, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, Israel, South Korea, Canada, Singapore, Japan, and Taiwan. That's the new one. So for all of these nationalities, the rules work basically the same. There might be slight differences, especially in like the visa types, but generally the free access to the labor market works the same way. So what it means that these 10 nationalities have free access to the Czech labor market. Like strictly translated, it means that you don't need to obtain any special permit or you don't need to fulfill any additional conditions to be able to accept an employment type of job offer in the Czech Republic. That means that you can work freely, basically. What it doesn't mean though is that you cannot really live here without any additional permit. So you can technically work here without any like specific like obligations to meet. On the other hand, you cannot really live here without a long-term visa or long-term residence permit. So it might be already a bit confusing at this part, but I'll explain. What it means in real life is that if you are one of these 10 nationalities, which I mentioned, and you come here under a short-term visa, or all the nationalities have the visa-free stay, the 90 days visa-free stay, in that situation, you cannot work because you're here as a tourist, you don't have a visa, you're here just under the visa-free stay, which is not a visa because it's a visa-free stay. Some people call it the tourist visa or something like that. It's not a visa, it's just a stamp that you enter the Schengen and that's when the 90 days start counting. So you don't have a visa, so you cannot work. So if you come here just as a tourist, you cannot work. What changes is that if you already have some kind of long-term visa or long-term residence permit in the Czech Republic, and that one would not on its own allow you to work, now you can work based on this exception for these 10 nationalities. So again, to make it a bit more clear, let's say you're here as a student, but not as a student of an accredited program, but some non-accredited programs like private universities, many of them. So you don't actually have the student purpose of stay, you have the other purpose of stay. And that under normal conditions does not allow you to work. So you can study the non-accredited program, but you cannot work as you would as a normal, proper student of an accredited program. So with this change, the free access to the Czech labor market, you can work even if you have just the other purpose of stay and not the proper student one. Similarly, if you have the family, either family or family reunification long-term visa, so not a card, but a long-term visa sticker in your passport, that generally does not allow you to work either. But with this free access to the Czech labor market, you can work. So even if you are here as a spouse and you just have the visa in your passport, not the card, you can still work if you're one of these 10 nationalities. So in these cases, it actually is beneficial for you and brings you some advantage. In some other cases, though, it can actually bring more complications than like making it easier for you. The main example, or the reason for that basically is that you need to you always need to fulfill the purpose of your stay under your visa or residence permit. So briefly said, if you come here as a student and you have a student visa or student residence permit, you primarily must study. If you come here under family reunification, you primarily must be here with your spouse. If you come here as a business person or get the živno, get the trade license, a business visa, freelance English teacher, whatever, you primarily need to like freelance. If you get the digital nomad visa or residence permit, then you primarily need to be a digital nomad. The free access to the Czech labor market is something on top of it, but you should not confuse it with the purpose of your stay. What I mean by that is that you, for example, came here as an English teacher, you got the business visa, the živno visa, freelance visa, whatever we call it, you just have the trade license and you invoice the schools. Then you can technically also like accept an employment offer. So you can have the trade license, the business visa, and then if some school or someone else, some other company offers you a full-time employment, you can technically accept that employment because you have free access to the labor market, so you can work regardless of your long-term visa or long-term residence permit type and purpose of stay. On the other hand, you need to be careful because if the purpose of your stay is freelancing, the trade license, the živnost, whatever, you must primarily do that. So you can technically have employment and self-employment at the same time, but if you don't fulfill the conditions of the business visa, means that you are not making enough money through the trade license, for example, because you primarily are employed and that's your main source of income, then you will not, or hardly, you will extend the business visa or apply for the residence permit, because to apply or to get a business residence permit, you need to show that you've been making enough money through your trade license. And if you don't, because you primarily focus on your employment, then you have a problem and your residence permit will be either denied or canceled or not approved, whatever. So this is where you need to be very careful, because the fact that you can work does not mean that you should and that it would be good for your visa. What you can potentially do if you know that, okay, I have this type of visa, let's say the business visa, but I don't want to be freelancer anymore, I want to accept this full-time offer, then it might be better for you just to switch from the business visa to an employee card. Because the process will be a bit easier for you, you can keep working during the whole approval process because you've been already here. And then there will be no problem with fulfilling the purpose of your stay, because then the purpose of your stay will be employment, you will have the employee card. So working full-time is not a problem, it's actually what you have to do. Problem it is if you have a different purpose of stay, but then are employed on top of it. Okay, hopefully this was clear. If it wasn't, guys, please write your questions in the chat, and I'll try to like explain better or answer the questions. I have seen that there is the English or Spanish comment, but it's not fair because I cannot see you, so I don't know if you've moved, and you probably moved, so I'll disregard this. But one more thing I want to mention, or two more things. One, what happens if you don't have a valid long-term visa or long-term residence permit? So if you need to like come to the Czech Republic, or if you want to come to the Czech Republic. And second will be changing employers, because that's also where many people, or generally the rules about that, because that's also where many people get confused. So everything I've been talking about now until now is for the situation where you have been already in the Czech Republic and you have a valid long-term visa and residence permit, or a residence permit. What if you don't have it yet? So you're still in the US or in the UK or in Japan or South Korea or wherever, and you want to move to the Czech Republic and use this advantage of having free access to the labor market. It does not really change much, guys. Unfortunately, it might look like, okay, free access to the labor market, I can work freely in the Czech Republic, so I just jump on a plane, find a job, and can stay forever. Unfortunately, that's not like that, because as I explained in the beginning, the free access to the Czech labor market only allows you to work here freely, plus only if you're not here as a tourist, but it does not allow you to stay in the country. So you still need to get some type of visa or residence permit, and if the reason for you to move here is employment, then you would be getting an employee card or a blue card. Let's focus on the employee card. So it would be Prague home. I see the question. I might get to it if it's to the topic, but I want to finish this because this is a topic specific live stream. So I'll do the questions at the end of the live stream. So if you want to move to the Czech Republic to work here, the free access to the Czech labor market does not really change much for you, because you will still need to get an employee card, which means you will still need to collect basically all the same documents as you would need without having free access to the labor market. You will still need to get an appointment at some embassy. You will need to submit the documents to the embassy. Then you will wait for like 2 months to get the employee card approved. So everything is basically the same. The only thing that changed there is that your employer does not need to post the job advertisement to the labor office, and you don't need to wait for the vacancy number. But now the waiting time for that is 0 days. So on paper, so in real life, it's like 3 days, a week, whatever. So you basically shorten the whole duration of the process by a week, technically. But in real life, you don't, because you still need more time than a week to collect all the other required documents. So like proof of accommodation, employment contract, criminal record, all that. So it doesn't really change anything if you're not here yet. But then when you already have the employee card with the free access to the labor market, that means that you have something called a non-dual employee card. Because the employee card normally combines two things. Combines permission to work in the Czech Republic and permission to live in the Czech Republic. So that's dual employee card. Permission to work, permission to live. In case of having free access to the labor market, you don't need the permission to work. You only need a permission to live here. So the employee card is so-called non-dual because you don't need two things. You just need one. So it's a different situation immigration-wise, and there are also different rules. So I'll tell you about the two basic rules for like changing employers, because that's the most important like rule, and that's also what happens pretty often, that you came here under one employer, or one employer got you the employee card, and now you found a different employer or you want to change employers. So One thing which is kind of advantage is that there is no strict rule of 60 days when you need to find a new employer, otherwise the employee card will be cancelled. This rule is there for the standard employee card. So if you have a standard employee card, you must find a new employer within 60 days, otherwise your employee card will be cancelled eventually. This rule is not there for the non-dual employee card with the free access to the Czech labor market. That does not mean that you should leave your job and like be at home for 6 months just doing nothing or looking for a job or really looking for a job and that everything will be fine. Even though there is no like hard line, getting back to the purpose of your stay, you still need to fulfill the purpose of your stay. And if you have an employee card, your purpose of stay is local employment. If you don't have local employment, then you're not fulfilling the purpose of your stay. So there should still be a reasonable amount of time between like you leaving a job and you finding another job. Okay, so it's still not like you can just be unemployed for however you want, because at some point the ministry will care that you're still unemployed under an employee card and will cancel it eventually anyway. So that's one important thing. Second thing is that you need to report changes of employer within 3 days. So if you quit a job and you already have a new one starting the next day or something, ideally you should report both at the same time so you don't have to do it twice. But if you, for example, just left a job and you don't have the new one yet, you still need to report the termination within 3 days. It's a simple form. You can just mail it to the ministry. You don't even need to go there in person, so that's okay. It's like a simple thing. But a lot of people I've talked to, they didn't know about that and they didn't do that, which is already a problem. Luckily for the employee card, it cannot be a reason to cancel your employee card, which could be the case for a blue card, but you still can get a fine. And it's kind of unnecessary to get 3,000 crowns fine for just reporting something late or not reporting it. So these are the two most important rules. Maybe third one, that there is no like limitation on how soon you can change employers, because for the standard employee card there is this rule of staying with the first employer for at least 6 months. With the non-dual employee card the rule is not there either. But still, like changing employers every month will not really look well, and it might potentially be a problem at some point as well. So I believe that's everything I wanted to tell you. So let me now go through the questions and let's see if there are some related to the topic. Then I'll answer them. If they're not related to the topic, I will not be answering them today because this is not an open Q&A live stream. It's a topic specific. So Michael will like to know more about application for work permit from third countries. So that's not really about this. English or Spanish, I addressed that question already. XYZ, if I switch from student visa to employee card, will the purpose of stay change to employee card? Yes, of course. And this is also one of the common mistakes among students, that potentially as a student you have free access to the Czech labor market, which means that as a student you can work. But as soon as you quit being a student, you don't have the free access to the labor market anymore. So if you want to switch from a student residence permit or student visa before finishing your studies and getting Czech diploma, then do it under the normal employee card. Don't go for the non-dual, because if you don't finish the school, you're seriously in trouble. I wanted to use a different word, but then YouTube conscious make me not do that. But this is a very common mistake, that students often switch to the non-dual employee card because they have free access to the labor market as students. But then if you don't finish the school successfully, then you're fucked, because then you don't have the access to the labor market anymore. And if you have the non-dual employee card, then basically there's almost no way to fix it. You should immediately stop working and then potentially switch again to a normal employee card, but that's very difficult to do. So I definitely don't recommend it. As a student, you can work So why would you switch to an employee card? Prague home. I'm on family reunification residence permit and also working. Can I provide VZP insurance paper confirmation if physical card is not ready yet? It's for extension, so unfortunately this is not the topic specific here today. Munir Ahmed, if my tuition fee is 1,500 euros per year, can I survive in Prague? Okay, so that's not a topical question. And Czechia with the Normoxin, what does it mean for scientific researcher? That's a good question, but this is the free access to the Czech labor market is only given to specific nationalities. So you would need to be one of you would need to be from US, Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, Israel, South Korea, Canada, Singapore, Japan, or Taiwan. And then what I've been talking about would apply to you as a scientific researcher. If you're from some other country, then it would not apply. And you might potentially get free access to the Czech labor market by different means. I believe that the scientific researchers also have free access to the labor market, but it's also tricky with the purpose of your stay. So you should primarily stick to the job, to the research you do, and not you can potentially have other jobs as well, but again, the purpose of your stay is more important. Okay, guys, no more questions. So thank you very much for joining the live stream today, and I will see you again Thursday, Monday, until the end of the world. Okay, so one more question. Prague home. In non-dual employee card, if there is promotion in same company, do we have to report? MOI helpline said we must, but the contract is the same. It's just an extra paper confirming job title changed. It depends. That's kind of tricky to distinguish, because if you have a non-dual employee card, it depends if you actually change what you do. So if you're like a junior software developer and now you're a senior software developer, which basically just means you have more experience and more money, you don't really need to report that, because that's not really a change of position or change of employer. But if you switch from a software developer to a team leader, that is a very different job, and then you should treat it as change of position, which means you should terminate one contract, start a new contract, report it to the ministry within 3 days. Sometimes it might be difficult to, this is a pretty clear example, I believe. Like if you work as a software developer and then you switch to a cleaning lady, that's kind of clear that it's a different job. But if it's something where you might just get some additional responsibilities, so you will still be a software developer, but now you will also have some people under you. You will have some subordinates. That's a question. If that's a change of position, potentially yes, because within the previous role you didn't have responsibility for other people, only for you. Now you have a managerial role. Then potentially that's a very significant change. On the other hand, it also depends on the situation. So this might be better to discuss individually, because it depends. If you're not sure, report it. That will not hurt you. It will hurt you more if you don't report it. So if you're not sure, report it. But if it's just the change of the title of the position or not really your responsibilities, that's not a change of position, so you should not technically report it. If it's a more significant change, then you should report it. If the employee card applied while still studying in accredited course, what kind of employee card it will be? I would still do the standard employee card, as I explained before, because if you go for the non-dual employee card, that means that you first must stay a student, and B, you must graduate. If one of these things doesn't happen, then you're screwed. So I would definitely go for a normal, meaning dual employee card. Dual, D-U-A-L. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining, for asking the questions, for being here. And hopefully this was helpful. If it was, please share, comment, like, you know the drill. And I will see you again Thursday, Monday, until the end of the world. Goodbye.